Hey everybody, welcome back to another movie review. Hope you guys are enjoying the content channel as of late. I just got done watching this, and yeah, so I have some thoughts. I don't know if you know, I don't know when this exactly will come out. So I think it's fine to put out a review, right? But I went or did not go, but virtually, I decided to attend the Sundance Film Festival once again. I usually like to just kind of take a peek at some things here and there, especially because sometimes certain films will just come and go, and you don't necessarily hear about them, or they don't gain a lot of distribution here in the U.S. or anywhere really. So sometimes it's good to see what's being offered, and I had my eyes on this, and I just got done watching it, and I have a couple of notes to relay. That film that we're going to be talking about is a film called Z. This was written and directed by Konada, who you guys may be familiar with movies such as Columbus, which I love, as well as After Yang, which I also really enjoyed, and most recently last year with A Big Bold Beautiful Journey, which I was not much of a fan of. This stars Haley Lou Richardson as well as two newcomers, I believe. And as the story goes, as the title kind of alludes to, we follow a person named Z, and she is dealing with some form of grief. Her parents have both passed away, and she is dealing with that grief and also trying to establish herself in the now, because as we meet her, there's the shot of from behind her, and we're kind of fixated on behind her at the start of the movie, and the idea is to present that distance that she has within herself. And as she is, moving along, and there's also, as the story goes on, I won't spoil it, but there's a point to also that distance that they try to uh, conceptualize within a certain playing field. But we'll get to that in a little bit. But to its core, she is someone who is dealing with grief, and she's uh, dealing with that inner loneliness and that distance that she has within herself. And she wanders around the city quite aimlessly until she meets Haley Lou Richardson's character, who is also in a similar spot, but for her, it's more or less to do with regrets that also kind of package it within grief as well. And these two form something of a bond as they walk around Hong Kong, and eventually form something of a bond between each other. So when it comes to Konada, I have enjoyed his work in the past. I've, quite enjoyed Columbus. I think it's just a really, really outstanding piece of work. After Yang, I enjoyed quite a bit as well. But most recently with Big Bold Beautiful Journey, I we started to see cracks. And my thing about Big Bold Beautiful Journey was that I always had felt that that was a studio film, and I always felt that that was Konada kind of getting himself involved in a specific space that isn't exactly probably true to his artistic merit. So when a film like Z was presented to me, when I was looking at the Sundance catalog, I my interest was piqued because I wanted to see him more, more in the spirit of how he usually is, more smaller scale, focusing more on specific ideas and not having to rely upon, a bigger budget, because in the case of Big Bold Beautiful Journey, it kind of worked against him in a lot of ways, especially with, the visualizations, how much he kind of uh, held on to that sort of idea or style or, mentality really. And unfortunately, when you get to Z, I actually think between the four films of his that I have seen, I would argue that this is probably his worst film, because the thing that is automatically an issue once you allow yourself to fall into the narrative is that there's an emphasis on that technical choice and that technical prowess. There's like, it's kind of trying to be, I wouldn't say avant-garde, but it has that sort of expression to where things are kind of left ambiguous or mysterious. Things are kind of given explanation, but the technical choices make it as though that there is something quirky and experimental happening. But really, that is all it is a technical showcase. But on a narrative level, there are fundamental flaws with it because on one hand, you have this trio of performances at the center of it that that like the camaraderie, the chemistry between them just does not register as authentic. Now, I took a peek at the Q and A because after these little things, they have little Q and A's afterwards. Apparently, they had shot this for only 3 weeks in Hong Kong, and it was a rather spontaneous type of shoot. They didn't like have big crews and stuff like that. It was just 7 people, and uh, he was rewriting stuff during that time, and they were shooting it in the vein of a documentary. When you look at the film and you think about all that sort of stuff, like kind of being the mentality there, it further drives my overall feeling that what is laid out here is extremely messy because you have these dynamics that are trying to, these dynamics that are going back and forth. Like there's maybe some sexual tension, maybe there isn't, maybe there's an emotional core, maybe there's something more, maybe it's psychedelic, like psychological, maybe there's, a greater meaning. And all these things are left to be kind of scattered. And at some point, I thought that that might have been maybe a point to the film because of what's happening to this character on the inside and to what the film also tries to explain later on about that, which feels again just kind of tacked on and rather just purposeless in that overall just like as if Konada just decided to write that out and put it in. Um, it's very messy in terms of its foundation, and those performances also just feel quite aimless and as incoherent as the story itself is, as it is fundamentally written. And as I explained, I mean, Konada was rewriting stuff and giving these scenes and these lines to the actors on the fly. It seemed it wasn't like, oh, I'll give you guys like a week or two to prepare to kind of hone in and understand. He said that we were just shooting it on the day, and whatever we got, we had to leave because we didn't want to interfere with the public life and stuff like that. Kind of guerrilla filmmaking, but ultimately in that spirit, the narrative itself suffers. It suffers a bit and it drags as well. I remember about 30 minutes into this, I was thinking, oh, we probably are almost done. And no, we were just getting started. It was only 30 minutes in, and it's a film that's only an hour and a half, but feels like 2.5 hours. It just feels as though that little is happening. And to that, it just feels like a lot of what is trying to be registered doesn't, and it doesn't feel important, it doesn't feel understandable, and it feeds little momentum or little consistency within its delivery of its narrative. So, and I mean, there's obvious points to what it's addressing. This idea about belonging, this idea about the effects of grief and regrets, and they kind of make it in a literal way. I won't spoil it, but there's something to the character of Z. She's facing something, a condition, we'll say, and the framework of that almost feels again tacked on. It doesn't feel like something that really needed to exist. It feels like some things that are just being plucked in because of, if you understand the production, it's just the director just kind of throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks. And unfortunately, with that spirit and that mentality, a lot of it does not stick. And a lot of it just feels out of place, and a lot of it just feels awkward and just flat out odd. And it's not odd to where it feels significant or it feels like we're reaching some sort of depth. It just feels like we're just doing a lot of random things with the hopes that it will be coherent, but it just is not. And those performances suffer quite a bit because of it. I could not buy any of them. I could not buy the lead. I couldn't buy Haley Lee Richardson. I couldn't buy that dude. It, and things also feel unresolved. It feels as if like it's all for naught, or in some ways also for very, very small, developments, things that don't necessarily lead to bigger, pictures, just small things, that small little threads that just are without care or don't have as much importance. So it's a bit messy, and I'm a bit disappointed because I really like Konada's sensibilities, at least when he started out. And I think that with this, I think that if you've given it more time, if it wasn't just kind of like, as at least as it seems from the Q&A, just a spontaneous like production, if you had actually given it more time, I think that then maybe you would have had something a little bit more interesting, and less is more in this case because they just kept throwing little things here and there to kind of give the story substance, but it just makes it drag and also bring it way more down than it needed to. Base level of just two people walking around Hong Kong addressing of grief and regrets, that's fine. But then all these little things that they start throwing in with this dude and other things here and there, it just makes it to be messy, incoherent, odd, and really a lack of understanding, and at some point, just a lack of care. So, so yeah, I think it's his worst film, and I think that it just doesn't. I hope maybe before release that maybe he's able to recut it, and maybe things might be make a lot more sense in a new cut, because as it stands, it's just not working, and I think that he needs to refine what it is that he worked on and find some kind of through line through what is just sloppy and messy. So yeah, so those are my thoughts on Z. I was not a fan of it. I immediately was starting to find issues with it, and those issues just became more apparent as time went on. And apparently, I don't know if it's true or not, but apparently there were walkouts for this when this premiered at Sundance. I don't know if that's exactly true or not. You guys let me know if you guys have seen the movie, but there you guys have it. And I mean, I can understand why, because it's just all over the place and a bit nonsensical as time goes on. But But you guys let me know your thoughts on Z if you guys saw it. If you guys were at the premiere, let me know. Were there any walkouts? I mean, that's what I've heard. Um, I hope he maybe considers, you know, looking at the cut again and doing some work on it, because yeah, it definitely needs work. So let me know your thoughts on Z if you guys checked it out in the comment section below. And that's gonna be it for this video, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. And until then, I will catch you guys in the next video. Bye.